The Creator is a 2023 American science fiction film, directed and produced by Gareth Edwards. John David Washington, Gemma Chan, and Ken Watanabe lead an all-star ensemble cast in this beautifully shot, but problematic in some parts in terms of storytelling. I'm here joined today by Dr. M. David Litwell, who is going to be gracious enough to share his thoughts on the film. Dr. Litwell, what did you think of this movie?
Well, thank you, Jason, and it's good to be here. There's a saying of Heraclitus, which I think touches on this film really well. And since it's quoted in The Refutation of All Heresies, I know it well. Heraclitus said that eternity is a child at play, moving pieces in a game. Kingship belongs to the child. And it really reminds us that the idea of an eternal creator who is also a child is a really ancient idea, and really scary too, because that means that the awesome forces of life and death surging through this cosmos are in fact child's play, like pieces moved on a chessboard at whim and for pleasure. I think it's a sobering thought, but what does it all mean? That's the question. And what does it mean in this film? What if God is a child? What if he's not, or she's not, evil, but actually amoral, not yet knowing the difference between good and evil? Then presumably God would need God's creation to teach him or her about morality before we all got destroyed anyway. It's certainly, I think, what I was expecting based on the trailer was the child was going to be evil or morally ambiguous character. And it ended up that there is an evil creator in the film, except the evil creator is humans who are in an apocalyptic war against AI. And it ends up that in this thought experiment, AI is actually morally, maybe even spiritually, better than humans and more human than humans. So it wasn't the evil creator I was expecting, but there was still this Gnostic theme where, if you remember in the Secret Book of John, when humanity is first created by the archons in the person of Adam, Adam is just a being of soul, a sort of like an automaton, but he's inert. And the Nicene preacher likens him to a statue, which I guess is a little bit like a robot. But Adam truly becomes human. The human becomes human when this divine light power comes into him. And it's a surprising event. I mean, it's quite unexpected. And I think in the case of AI, it is in many ways unexpected what they will end up accomplishing, you know. And one would hope that the movie is right, that in fact, AI, if done right, would be more human or more humane than us, than humans, than the creators. And, because we have this biological past of, we were apes swinging through the trees, defending our own tribe. And, presumably robots don't have that evolutionary past, don't have that instinct of self-defense and those kinds of identity politics issues. So one would hope that they would do better, that the divine spark would enliven them, and that they would be more human than human, and that they would keep us around instead of wiping us out. I mean, I say that tongue in cheek.
So at the summit of Edwards' film is a very basic plot. We've seen it in things like Terminator. AI sets off a nuclear warhead, creates a disaster. There's a war between humans and artificial intelligence. John David Washington plays Joshua, who is an undercover operative who goes in to find Nirmata. Nirmata is considered the chief maker of this AI. And so, surprise, surprise, the US government wants to wipe Nirmata out, wipe out all the AI. They have this giant advanced space station called the USS Nomad that can wipe out, things within like however many miles radius. And they find out that there is an ultimate weapon that can destroy the Nomad. And the ultimate weapon Joshua finds out is Alfie, played wonderfully by this child actor. I'm sorry, I can't remember what her name is. But beneath that simple plot and the numerous allusions to other films, there's lots of Blade Runner, there's lots of Alien, there's lots of Terminator, Ghost in the Shell, Akira. It explores all of these issues that I found very interesting for you to look at because you've dealt with a lot of post-human transformation in your work.
Right. There's the Gnostic side of it, and then there's the post-human transformation side of it. I find it to be a lovely story. It's a nice kind of textured love story because Joshua is in love with Nirmata and she ends up dying. And then for whatever reason, they have this, final scene where they are reunited in the Nomad and in heaven, as it were.
But I'm glad you brought that up because it's almost like a reverse Garden of Eden in a way. How they,
Yeah, it's a very Edenic
how they
scene. Yeah,
reunite. Yeah, it's very nice.
if it's in the spaceship garden, or it's like a crop field. It's not an entirely satisfying ending because they end up, just being blown up seconds after being reunited. But it's certainly interesting to think about. I guess my own sense of AI is it's only one mode of post-human transformation. In my book on post-human transformation, in the sort of coda at the end, I expressed some concern about humans upgrading themselves in such a way that they jettisoned hard work and virtue and what makes us human. Everything that has made us human is still useful for the human project and for continuing to shape our moral character. So if you kind of shortcut or short circuit that, that's potentially problematic. But in a case where it's just AI, they don't, robots haven't gone through the evolutionary history that we have, that I think it is at least worth thinking about how they could potentially be better than us. But of course, depending on the film, I mean, you'll either be very positive or very negative towards AI. In the Terminator situation, it's quite negative. Here, it's quite positive. And I kind of like that as a thought experiment. Even if it's wrong, it's fruitful to think about. I would like to think that our, synthetic offspring, as it were, our silicon offspring, we would somehow be able to transmit the divine spark to it, and that we would get over this idea that there's something, unique about the human soul that's not in animals or in synthetic life forms. I think that that's a lesson that we all should learn, that divine spark. It's even in worms. So why wouldn't it be in silicon? And of course, this all goes back to, what your definition of humanity is. But I think it's important to think of humanity as something that can leap across, leap the gap from a wet platform to a dry platform. At least I'd like to think so. Maybe I'm too idealistic, but from flesh and blood to synthetic neurons, I'd like to think that that could happen.
I feel it's important to mention the cinematography in this film and the location setting. For me, the ultimate strengths of this film in terms of just being a storytelling vehicle are the cinematography and its many allusions to different science fiction film. Like we mentioned Blade Runner, we mentioned Terminator, we mentioned Ghost in the Shell. Ultimately, I think the downfall as well is that it alludes maybe too much to these science fiction giants of the past. It really does have kind of the breathtaking set pieces in terms of the set design of the original Alien. And I really think that the stars of this film are Greg Fraser, who did The Batman. He did Rogue One with Gareth Edwards before. A lot of great films. He did Dune and Oren Sofer. They really did a beautiful job shooting this movie. And ultimately, the Bangkok, Thailand sets really create this topsy-turvy atmosphere. It gives it a very cyberpunk feel. within this glitz and all this beautiful eye candy, you have a very simple story of two people learning about each other, right? You have Joshua and you have Alfie. Joshua is learning what, because there's a lot of what my son would call robo racism in this film. Like, you really start off like thinking, oh, the AI is bad, it's evil. We really take the side of the military at first, and then Joshua learns both through flashbacks. You can see where he was before, where he is now, and in his interactions with Alfie, that they're kind of becoming more. So Joshua shows Alfie how to become more, and Alfie shows Joshua ultimately what it is to become something more than his existence, because his existence is kind of hollow after his wife dies. And there is a big spoiler. We have talked about spoilers in this review, but I don't want to spoil too much about Alfie and Joshua's relationship. So ultimately, I think this was really great meditation on what it means to be human, on what it means to look at other life forms with the value judgment of a human versus an other. Why do we value one thing versus the other more? The robots discover religion. They're like Buddhist AI. So, David, what would you give this film in terms of your rating system?
Well, I'm not a movie critic. I'm just a lowly scholar. But no, I mean, I certainly I give it a thumbs up for the reasons that you've mentioned. It's not just eye candy and graphics, and let's face it, we're in a cinematography universe where that stuff sells and sells a lot better than this film. I mean, this film did wonderful, I think, but not as big as like a Marvel film, I would imagine. But it does have a story, and that's really important. You do have a plot, and that is, in the end, what's going to make this movie enduring and thought provoking. And yeah, I love the fact that the robots are the Buddhists at the end, and these beautiful scenes of a kind of Silicon Buddhist temple, and with the with the Buddhists, with the monks, they're all AI monks, and I like that because it's thought provoking, because you think that religion and spirituality, that's a uniquely human domain, and they force you to think outside the box. So yes, obviously there are some nitpicking issues here, but I think this is a nice film, worth the money that you fork over for it. And yeah, I can't say that of probably 80 to 90% of films today. So there you go.
Agreed. Agreed. So, as Lord Sobek, I give it at 7 out of 10 crocodiles. So, highly recommended as well. If you're a science fiction fan and you're not into the religion stuff, you'll still enjoy this film. If you're into the religious and Gnostic stuff, you will still find something to really enjoy about this film. So, highly recommended.
Yeah, I just wanted to see it for myself. And I think it's important for scholars to kind of be at least somewhat up to date on the popular culture stuff and seeing how Gnostic themes still pervade our culture. So I hope that, yeah, the stuff that I produce helps people become deeper thinkers about these sorts of films and stories.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's our new rating system. 7 out of 10 crocodiles. So, pretty dang good, I would say. So, until next time, have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you in the new year.
Thanks for having me on. Take care.